Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the second instalment of the West End Imps show. I am your host, Jake Tong. We're back for another episode looking at the Portsmouth game. Before we do get started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe as we're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. We could get that, it'd be massive. Make sure you go over, read the blog. There'll be a podcast out on Friday with Gary and Ben also, and also a preview up next week. So plenty of content coming out there is. But on to important matters. We're joined by our co-host, as ever, Mr. Conrath. Chris, how are you doing, mate?
Morning, very well, thank you, very well.
Good to have you back on, mate. Just going to open it up then. What did you think about the game yesterday? Obviously, the team news was in at 2 o'clock and we had a couple of changes. What did you make of the changes that were enforced on Mark Kennedy?
Precursor to the conversation, I wasn't actually able to get to the game yesterday, so my thoughts are a little bit subjective coming from the radio, social media and the highlights that I watched. But team lineup, I think obviously the big one was Scully not in the team, which prompted all of the conspiracy theories on Twitter that he was obviously signing somewhere for another team. Apparently illness. I guess, no one ever going to know really what's going on behind the scenes, apart from those that are behind the scenes. But I wasn't overly surprised. I think Bishop coming in was probably about the only option that we had really. He was never going to start with Maguire, I don't think, although obviously he came on later in the game, which I'm sure we'll come to. But yeah, it looked pretty much as expected, apart from the Scully illness.
And the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, you could tell that Pompey were a good side. They were zipping the ball around pretty quickly, created a couple of opportunities. I think it was Rico Hackett put one over the bar and it looked easy to score. What did you make of the first sort of 25 minutes? Because we were under the cosh a little bit, weren't we?
Yeah, it sounded that way on the radio. I have to say, actually, listening to the radio, Jimmy Walker, brilliant summariser, commentator, really enjoyed how he talked and what he was saying. The noise from their home crowd is something else, isn't it? It came through really quite intimidating just on the radio, so I can't imagine what it was like on the pitch side. It sounded like we were pretty much as expected. I don't think anyone that I know, I think Keith maybe said that he fancied a draw, but I don't think anyone I know expected anything other than Lincoln to get beaten. Sounded pretty much full on first 20 minutes. I think we got a bit of a foothold in the game though, and started towards the tail end of the second half. The crowd started to become quieter. They didn't turn, but they sounded quieter. And I think we started to kind of more than match them, but probably a little bit similar to the Exeter, a little bit slow out first 15 minutes or so. Didn't go behind this time, which is excellent, because I think had one gone in, floodgates could easily have opened. Sounded like we were under the cosh, and then we kind of got a bit of a foothold back into the game, which was really encouraging.
Yeah, I was going to draw some parallels with the Exeter game, but you've done that for me, mate.
Obviously, the other parallel I'd like to draw, Jake, is that I think one of the biggest things I've noticed, we've had two competitive games in the league with Mark as our manager. The biggest thing I've noticed is, or the difference from last season, is that those are two games last season we would have lost. We've come out with what I think was a good point against Exeter, and given the nature of the team and the squad that we had available and the nature of Portsmouth's squad, yesterday, I think if we'd had a full squad, a draw away at Pompey is a good result. Given the fact we were kind of bare bones a little bit, it was a phenomenal result for me. A 0-0 away at Pompey, you'd take that any day of the week.
Well, given what Exeter did to Port Vale yesterday, you'd probably say that point is looking even better now, given they won 4-0. So, obviously, one impressive performance for me in that first sort of 20 minutes was Carl Rushworth. I don't know if it came up on the radio. Everything stuck, literally everything. And they had a free kick where last year, perhaps Josh Griffiths might have parried it into more of a dangerous area. It just stuck with Rushworth. I was really impressed. Really impressed with him.
That definitely came through, and obviously having Jimmy Walker on the commentary helps because, keeper. I think that, it sounded like he had a fantastic game. One patchy little possible mistake in the second half, but he recovered from it. Watch the highlights and the saves that he was making. They were all, like you say, sticking to him, which was really good. Seems to really command and kind of coordinate that defence, which is what I think we maybe missed. As good a keeper as Griffiths was, or is, I don't think he had that presence that Rushworth seems to have.
Yeah, even though he's a little man, he seems to be coming out for corners and taking corners and stuff like that.
He's brave, isn't he? And he's very proactive.
Yeah, a very good goalkeeper. You can see why he's capped at under 21 level for England. Yeah. Moving on to the second half then. Do you know what, Chris? We probably came out the traps better than Portsmouth did, similar to the Exeter game last week. We had a couple of opportunities. I think we then switched to 3 at the back when Hakeeb came off. Teddy Bishop went off injured, which we're not too sure if anything's going on between those two. But when we went 3 at the back, Chris, it looked like if there was going to be a team that was going to nick it, it was probably going to be us.
Yeah, it did sound that way on the radio, and Jacko coming on sounded like he had a really good performance. I'm so confident about our defensive setup and about the players we have across that back 4 or back 3 or back 5 or however it pans out over the course of the season. We've got a lot of options. Bearing in mind we haven't even got Walsh or Montsma back. I've spoken to you last week about my view on Montsma, and my personal thing would be I'd really like to see him in that holding role just as an experiment, because I think he's got the qualities to play that role. But we've got a lot of really good options across the back, which I think is the best foundation we could have, given the complete lack of consistency in the defence last season, which was a massive undoing for us, week in, week out.
And given how good we are at the back at the moment, it appears it is very clear that we are lacking in the final third, with the biggest indication of that having to bring Chris Maguire on with 10 minutes to go, who in all fairness, ran his socks off. He was definitely very good. He caused Portsmouth a lot of problems. However, is Chris Maguire doing that to put himself in the shop window ahead of a move, or is Chris Maguire playing because he wants to perhaps resurrect his Lincoln City career?
I don't actually care either way. The fact he's turning out and playing, given the circumstances, I think you've got to give him some credit for that. He could quite have easily had a tantrum, which is probably what we expected him to do, and spent his time on the Brayford in his socks and flip-flops like he normally does at Costa Coffee. I think, you have to give credit to him. We all know that we're a bit lacking up front, but we have got players to come back in. Obviously missing Scully yesterday. We've got Vernon, and we've got House, and we've got Kendall. We're not, although 2 out of those, House and Kendall, maybe not proven so much at this level. We've got exciting players potentially coming in. We're pretty much been told, and we're pretty much confident that we're going to bring in at least 1, if not 2 more forward players. Whether that's sort of wingers or strikers. I think we do need to bring those kind of a couple of loans, a couple of those exciting players in. It will come, and I think the positive I'm taking is we're unbeaten. I know it's 2 draws, I know it's 2 points, but we're making chances, and we're not conceding as we perhaps could have or would have done last season. So I think there's so many things to look forward to, and I think as this team grows, as those players come back or new players come in over the course of the next couple of weeks before the window closes, then I think everything points to for me anyway, a pretty decent sort of upper mid table finish, which is what I'd be hoping to be looking at kind of May time.
And moving on to man of the match contenders, who did you think stood out, based on listening to the radio? Was there a standout player?
It's really hard when you're not watching the games, so I never vote in polls, and I never do, Gary's player ratings if I haven't watched the game, because I think it's a little bit unfair. But from the perspective of the radio, I think it was probably either Rushworth or O'Connor. Sounded like O'Connor had a really good game as well. Touched upon it last week that he was a bit shaky, maybe a bit off, lacks pace, but sounded like he and Poole are forming a really solid partnership. Let's hope we can get through to the end of the month with Poole still on our books. And yeah, I think so. For me, probably Rushworth or O'Connor, but I wouldn't. I'm not in a well-informed enough position to say.
Yeah, having been at the game, I think it was definitely Paudie O'Connor. Had a really good game. Really marked Colby Bishop out the game, didn't really look a threat at all, and even when the ball was at his feet, looked very comfortable playing it across to Regan Poole or moving it forward. Throwing it forward then, Chris, because we won't preview this game on the channel. We'll have a bit of a go now. Doncaster on Tuesday night. It's surely a game to experiment a little bit with those who aren't getting the minutes. You may be looking at Charlie Kendall coming in for a start. The likes of perhaps Adam Jackson coming in. Players who have been on the bench predominantly coming in and getting some fitness. It's a great opportunity for them, isn't it?
100%, yeah. I mean, I don't put any great investment into that competition myself, but it's a really good opportunity. I really hope Kendall starts. I think it's a great opportunity for him to get some minutes under his belt and see how he might fit into the patterns of play that Mark's trying to introduce. But yeah, Jacko should get a game as well. Maybe a couple of changes around in the midfield if we've got players available to come in. So yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's all about next Saturday and another hopefully full, or near to full stadium for the Forest Green game.
And that wraps up this edition of the West End Imps Show. Chris, have you got anything to plug this week before we call it a day?
No, not this week, mate.
Nothing to plug. Make sure you come and subscribe to the channel. It'd be massively appreciated. Like I said at the start of the video, we are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. It'd be massively appreciated. We do put a lot of effort. For example, I am probably still a little bit drunk going to Portsmouth yesterday. I've had to wake up at 9 o'clock to record this. So we are putting a lot of effort into these videos. Thank you to Chris for coming on. He's been a massive help to this sort of show. Massively inspired. Really great opinions and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you, Chris. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back this time next week to review the Forest Green game. Hopefully 3 points for Lincoln. Thank you for watching.
See you later.